Hello, hello. Okay. Good morning and welcome everyone. My name is Grzegorz Galusek. I am one of SIPTA experts. I also work for the MFC. It's really great to see so many colleagues, hopefully fans of ESG, joining us for today's webinar titled ESG and Sustainability Reporting for MFIs. I'm sure most of you know what ESG stands for, but in case there are people who are new to this concept, ESG stands for environmental, social, and governance. And it is a framework that is used increasingly by investors and businesses to measure organizational long-term sustainability, social impact risk management, beyond the traditional financial metrics. And ESG used to be something nice to have. Today, it's, as you all probably know, it's more of a strategic requirement for any organization. So funders expect it, regulators are tightening their standards, ESG standards, and MFIs increasingly to demonstrate not only what they do, but how they do. And that's exactly what we'll unpack today. A few housekeeping and session rules. So we'll be together for about 100 minutes plus we'll have a Q&A part. Just a few practical notes. The session is being recorded. Slides will be shared with you after the webinar. Please use the chat for questions. We'll collect them throughout the webinar and address as many as possible. And yes, we want your questions. This is a technical topic, but also a very practical one. So we are fortunate to have today two excellent experts from Agents for Impact. Let me introduce them one by one. So Yannick Rust, who is director at Sustainability Rating and Risk Director. And Yannick has been working for impact investing since 2015. You can see his bio with he he had experience at GEXC Capital Partners, Deutsche Bank Sustainable Investment Team. He was part of the Deutsche Bank Sustainable Investment Team and Investing Visions. At AFI, he leads ESG assessment, consulting, and training. He holds a dual Bachelor of Science in International Management, but also completed the Harvard Strategic Leadership in Financial Inclusion program, and is a real polyglot. Speaks fluently many languages. I was a little bit puzzled by this GEXI. Yannick, would you mind taking like a few seconds and explaining what actually GEXI is? I'm not even
Absolutely,
sure if I
Grzegorz.
pronounce it correctly.
You pronounce it perfectly. It's an abbreviation that stands in short for Global Exchange for Sustainable Investments.
I see. Okay. Excellent, excellent. And we'll also have a pleasure to have among us today Pratibha Singh, who is Sustainability Rating Deputy Director at AFI. And Pratibha is a development professional with deep expertise in gender, climate, migration, and conflict. She has worked across India, Thailand, and Germany in research and project management roles, authored around 40 publications, and is currently pursuing her PhD at EBS University. And Pratibha brings a strong SDG and policy lens to sustainable finance. So it seems we are in very good hands today. Just a very a quick look at what SIFTA is. SIFTA is the sponsor of this webinar. It stands for Social Inclusive Finance Technical Assistance. It's a program, it's an EU program, European Commission program that is managed by European Investment Bank and is part of the Investment EU Advisory Hub. I'm sure you heard about what this hub is. It's a special platform created by the EU that is managed by the European Commission, and the aim is to provide technical assistance and tailored advisory support to project public authorities and financial intermediaries. As you can see, it also helps to develop microfinance and social finance and social enterprise in the EU. Uh, so a few points about SIFTA. As I said, it supports microfinance providers and social enterprise finance. It works across EU 27, and it offers capacity building, project advisory, and market development services. It is offered by a consortium of three institutions, three organizations: Frankfurt School for Finance and Management, European Microfinance Network, and us, that is the Microfinance Center, Poland-based Microfinance Center network that works in Europe and Central Asia. The important, one of the most important facts about SIFTA is that the advisory support it provides and all the associated peer learning and learning activities within the program are completely free of charge. So if you qualify, if you are one of the providers, either microfinance provider or or social enterprise finance provider, and you are based in the EU and you haven't benefited from it, you should immediately write to EIB. You can see the email address on the screen, and they will respond to you. Let's move to the EIB slide, perhaps. Yes, this is it. And they will immediately respond to you and will ask you to fill out a questionnaire, and then we'll let you know if you qualify into the program. Let's move to the next slide. Also, I'd like to provide a handful of upcoming MFC programs, events that are either SIFTA related or not. So another SIFTA webinar that we are planning is on psychological safety in teams, in organizations, a foundation for trust, innovation, and performance, and that webinar will take place on 25th of June. And also, let's move to the next slide. If you haven't registered yet for the MFC annual conference, it is the biggest microfinance event in the region, if not globally. It will take place in Albania, in Durrës. Durrës is a coastal town on the Adriatic coast. 19th of May, there's still a chance to register. We'll have very many high-level speakers. Suffice it to say that Professor Andreas Rodriguez Pose, a professor at the London School of Economics, will join us, will offer the keynote speech focusing on development traps in countries across the globe. So both developed and not yet developed countries. Please feel free to register for this conference if you haven't done that yet. Okay, now moving to the next slide. And it's probably time for me to pass the mic to Yannick. Yannick, are you ready
I am
to
ready,
take over from
Grzegorz.
me?
Thank you so much. I hope that everybody can hear me well. And first, I would like to thank the MFC team for the kind invitation and also for setting up this entire space of knowledge sharing in the context of the SIFT program. So thank you so much, Grzegorz, Joanna, and Shimon. We're delighted to be here. So yeah, my name is Yannick, and together with my colleague Pratibha, we will be spending those 90 minutes together. And second, I would like to thank you, all the participants that have registered and logged in. Monday is quite a particular day because it's the start of the week, and most of us, I believe, have our team meetings to set the stage for the week. So the fact that you have been able to carve out 2 hours, whether it's with a coffee in your hand or maybe side having the lunch on the side, really is a big pleasure for us. And I would like to show you how we have thought to that we will have the 90 minutes together. First of all, I would speak for 45 minutes to give you, I would say, more theoretical overview of what ESG reporting is about, what the regulations are, what comes into effect, what is already into effect. And in the second half, then Pratibha will go much more into examples. I believe that examples are a fantastic way to really see what are the good best practices and what are the mistakes that one should not make. I will share my screen with you so that you can see a little more in detail how we have planned chapter by chapter this meeting. I hope you can see my screen. Right. So first, I would start with an overall introduction of the importance around ESG, like Grzegorz has been mentioning, environment, social, and governance. Second, we will go into the different frameworks. What are the regulations out there that affect the entire topic of ESG reporting? Then, as I mentioned, we move into a few case studies. What is good? What is bad ESG reporting? Then we will see the importance and I would say, the role that governance plays when it comes to ESG reporting before we will leave you with what we hope a few very practical steps on how you can set up an ESG reporting system in case you don't have one. And then in the end, as it has been mentioned, we have time for question and answers. If I see some of your questions popping up in the chat, I will try to address it right away. Otherwise, we will make sure that in the end, we have sufficient time to address any queries that you may have, anything that may have crossed your mind or your desk over the past few weeks since you have registered for the webinar where you thought, oh, this is ESG reporting. I have this question on my mind. I hope that today can be the opportunity that you can address this question and that we can make the space to hopefully then also answer it. What helps us a lot is to understand a little bit all those, although the entire webinar is of course virtual, we cannot see you sitting in the same room, but still for us it's fantastic to know who's there with us and what is their experience when it comes to ESG reporting. So I would like to invite dear Shimon to open the first poll. The question is, how would you describe your current familiarity with ESG frameworks? There are 4 answer options. Number 1 is completely new to the topic. I have just started. Second one is I know the basics. I know that E stands for environment, S for social, G for governance. C is I know a few of the ESG reporting frameworks. Maybe I know what the Global Reporting Initiative is, TCFD, European Sustainability Reporting Standards, or D is I am already an expert. We have a team that is dedicated. We have a data owner that collects on a monthly basis the ESG data. I see that there's still a few responses coming in. So needless to say that A is from the most beginner to D most advanced. And I will leave 9 more seconds. Then we have completed the full minute. Still a few answers coming in. Perfect. Dear Shimon, if we could disclose then to the entire audience the results, you may be able to see that almost half, the majority, almost 50% know the basics, ES and G. A third is familiar with different ESG reporting frameworks. And then we have approximately the same share of, I will call it new to ESG, don't want to say beginners, and the experts, but to speak very profanely, beginners and experts. So I think, we are centered around a basic understanding of what ESG is, and we hope that at the end, not only the beginners walk away with plenty of new insights about where ESG reporting is currently standing, but that also the 9% then can say, okay, I have learned something that is completely new to me. Thank you so much, Shimon. And we can close this poll. And then the second one before we slowly start into the topic. So poll number 2 is, who of you currently produces any form of sustainability or ESG report? Again, we have, I think, 4 answer options. So Shimon, I will kindly ask you if you could open the poll. Thank you so much. Option number 1, I have never produced any ESG report. Number B, we have a project plan, somebody is working on it, and by Q3, Q4, we're planning to start it. Yes. Option number C, we have an ESG report, but we haven't been disclosing it to anybody. We use it for internal purposes. And then D is, we have an ESG report. Maybe you already used the Global Reporting Initiative standards, and we have also published it so that stakeholders, our clients, our investors, maybe even the community can see it. Again, I think I'll give 1 minute, so 20 more seconds. See a few more answer options. A few more answers are coming in. Perfect. Dear Shimon, if you could kindly disclose the answers to the entire audience. So I see much more balanced and rounded than the question number 1. We have 1/4 that publish externally, so really active in that, 12 out of 43. Again, also 1/4 that says we're planning to start it. So maybe a person already been assigned with the task to start setting up specific milestones on when the sustainability report can finally then be disclosed. We have 16% that have, so 1/6 that say we have it for internally, and still 1/3 that do not have a published one. So yeah, quite round, quite balanced answer options. Thank you so much for answering the questions, because it helps me where approximately we're standing, and I can make a few adjustments then also depending on where I think it may be more useful for others. So let us start right into the presentation and into our journey that we have today around the topic of ESG reporting. So slide number 1, the increasing importance of ESG. What I like to say at this stage is that I hope that everybody in this webinar is convinced that ESG reporting and ESG is important, and that this is the reason that you're also attending this. If this is not the case, I hope that by the end of the presentation, you are convinced that setting up an ESG reporting system is important. And why is that the case? So we see that there are extrinsic, I would say, pushes or currents. The first one is coming from the funders. So here we differentiate between 2 categories. We first see the development finance institutions. So for example, KfW through the private sector arm, which is DEG. We have Proparco, FMO, just to name a few. I believe those are the ones that have been requesting from you as their portfolio companies for the longest time to disclose on ESG, because they wanted to make sure that the money that they invest in you is generating a certain impact. So there, I believe if you are already receiving external funding from development finance institutions, then reporting on ESG is nothing new for you. What is new is that now increasingly funds are being regulated as well to disclose their ESG performance or the ESG performance of their portfolio companies. We will speak in a few slides about what this regulation is that is requesting the funds to disclose on the sustainability. But here the key definitely is that I would like you to walk away from this webinar is, if you would like to, in case you're planning or you already have accessed funding from EU investors, then you need to report on ESG in order to still stay eligible for those external sources of funding, be it debt or equity. The second big external push is coming from the regulators. I don't know if we have a few regulators here in this call. Of course, we have different jurisdictions, different countries here present. Towards the end of the presentation, Pratibha has prepared an overview of the countries that are present, and she will try to cluster where is your country currently standing in terms of ESG regulation. What definitely those that are sitting in the risk departments of the banks and the microfinance institutions that are present today in the webinar may have already noticed is that the regulators have been asking to, what we see very broadly, to translate what are the climate risks that are affecting, let's say, the financial health of your institution. So in terms of climate risk, you may know that we differentiate between physical risks. Those are droughts, heats, or floods, and transition risks. So this is everything that entails the shifts from towards a fossil, how do you call it? No fossil economy. Sorry, I don't know the exact term right now. Fossil free, probably. So, for example, from the demand side, if you see that more and more investors are looking to invest into funds that say, I don't want to invest in anything that has to do with oil, gas, or fossil fuels. So definitely what we see from regulators, they more and more incorporate ESG requirements for you to disclose, and definitely starting with S. So again, key for us is really for you to walk away to see that there more and more an external push is coming for you to disclose on ESG. So where are you today? Just trying to map the field that we're playing on today. What we would like to try to convince you on something that we see, because like Grzegorz has kindly mentioned, here at Agents for Impact, we also have an ESG consulting department. So when we partner with microfinance institutions, what we see many times is that data is available. Many times, one of the first conversations that we have is, okay, we have to report on ESG, and we will look into the frameworks in a few minutes. But where should I have to completely collect this data anew? And this is where we walk in and say, look, this data is already available and sitting somewhere in your company. And I would like to give you a few very specific examples. Let's take a typical social ESG data point, which is gender pay gap. So this is something that is sitting in your human resource department. Or let's take, again, from social, what is the share of female to male borrowers? This is sitting in the operations department. And you will see throughout this presentation, we will explain or share with you a few steps of how you can centralize those data, because this is absolutely key that you have one person that is responsible, that knows where to get this data from, because it is already there. So today, the objective is really to make sure how you can set up, even if it is a very simple ESG reporting system, and I will give away what this looks like. It's a simple Excel map, how such an ESG reporting system can be designed. So just the way that you have been maybe collecting the first financial data when your microfinance institution or bank has been set up exactly in the same way that you can set up and start collecting on ESG data. So probably the most urgent question is what are the different frameworks? And I have also tried to blend in the effects of regulation that is currently having its implications on the ESG frameworks. Number one, so this is, I would say, if there's a second thing that you walk away, this is the one that you should definitely remember. So the most important ESG framework, and this is coming from a regulation that is called SFDR. Now, this is a European regulation that stands in short for Sustainable Finance Disclosure Regulation. And basically what it does is that it categorizes funds that are listed in the EU into three categories: Article 6, Article 8, and Article 9. Now, those are three numbers where you may say, okay, I don't know what to do with those numbers. For that reason, I think the mainstream then has started to assign, because the numbers were not clear enough, colors to it. So Article 6 are so-called brown funds. Those are funds located in the EU that say we have nothing to do with sustainability, and we don't want to want to have anything to do with it. To put it in very simple terms, we don't care about sustainability. Article 8 are so-called light green funds. Those are funds that say, apart from pursuing or generating a financial return for my investors, we're also trying to meet environmental and social characteristics. So they have set up certain ESG KPIs that they try to meet and that they try to, basically achieve. Now, one more is missing, Article 9, dark green. As the color suggests, you can imagine, those are the funds that claim by themselves. So in the sales prospectus, you can read, it says, we are a fund that apart from generating a return, we would also we have environmental and social and governance as the mission of the fund almost. We actively pursue to see how we can have a positive impact on those three pillars. Now comes the key part. As soon as a fund that you would like to access external funding from, or that you may already be accessing funding from, is categorized as either Article 8 or either Article 9, they have to report on 14 PIs. This is another abbreviation that stands for Principal Adverse Impact Indicators. And I have prepared one slide that will give you the overview, and also in the chat later when Pratibha is speaking, I will share with you in the chat where exactly you can find all those 14 PIs. That means the funds that categorizes either Article 8 or Article 9, for every portfolio company that they invest in on an annual basis, they need to report on those 14 PIs, which is nothing else than ESG KPIs. So, and very important to walk away with is that what we see, almost all microfinance funds in Europe are categorized as Article 8 or Article 9. So this is where our key recommendation is definitely start setting up an ESG reporting system that reports on those 14 PIs. The second framework that probably many of you know, I think we had 30% of companies that have been disclosing ESG reports already, 1/3. So probably we like to say the mother of sustainability reporting, the Global Reporting Initiative. They were started, if I remember correctly, in 1997. They are based in Amsterdam in the Netherlands, and they were for many years the most comprehensive framework. May have been a little bit overwhelming at the beginning for many microfinance institutions that were new to ESG reporting, but for sure the most comprehensive ones. And what we have seen is that most of the companies that prepare and publish ESG reports have been using the Global Reporting Initiative standards to come up with their ESG reporting. The third one is, again, a European regulation that may not directly affect you, but maybe for some institutions, in case we have banks here with us from EU access, or from countries that would like to access the EU, then this may also be relevant for you. Again, abbreviations, I will walk you very slowly through it so that it stays in the mind. So the regulation is called CSRD, which stands for Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive. What it says, it is regulating companies that operate in the EU and that meet 2 out of 3 criteria. So either the company has more than 250 employees, more than 20 million in asset size or balance sheet size, or more than 40 million in turnover. So as soon as you meet 2 out of those 3 criteria, you need to report on the ESRS. So this is the first abbreviation that you see here in the third column. What does ESRS stand for? It's the European Sustainability Reporting Standards. Again, very comprehensive, very large, and in case that you fall under this regulation, maybe as a bank, then you have to integrate the ESG reporting based on those standards into your annual report that the auditor will assure, I think is the word. So this is just an overview of the 3 frameworks that personally we believe are the most comprehensive ones, but definitely please remember the tier 1 framework, which is SFDR and PI reporting, and you will see that we will spend quite some time on this during the presentation. Dear Shimon, I would like to give over to you again for the third Paul, if you could kindly open it, and we will have a small deep dive into e-environment. If you could give me a guess, what do you think? How much percent of your total carbon footprint is in your loan portfolio? So many of you that may be sitting here, microfinance institution banks, you may say, okay, well, we have offices. Of course, we purchase our electricity, but apart from that, we have maybe a few company vehicles. What are we actually contributing to carbon footprint? Oh, yes, I'm sorry. I think, yeah, but you can see the options exactly 30, 60, 90%. And I will give you 10 more seconds. We will have to see what the winner gets. Dear Shimon, if I could kindly ask you to share with everybody the results. You can see that almost 50%, or I will not use percentages here, otherwise it may be too confusing when seeing two percentages. Almost half of it is saying that 30%, so the lowest amount that is created by the portfolio, one quarter, 60%, and one third is saying that 90% of the portfolio. I had expected other numbers, but I have to say that the one third that, and dear Shimon, we can close the poll now. Thank you so much. That the one third is right. So 90% of your total carbon footprint is lying in your loan portfolio. Now, I would like to walk you through three, how would I say, three categories of the climate footprint that are also part of the 14 pies. Number
And
one,
Yannick, if I
yeah,
could
please,
interrupt, so
please.
if for those three frameworks that you presented, if you are if you are an MFI that is starting its ESG journey, would you say that the ESG will be driven mainly by the first one, by the SFDR slash PEAI framework? Is this correct to say something like this?
Exactly. Thank you so much for this important, George. Absolutely. So
Mhm.
our key recommendation is definitely, as of today, start to set up what you can see in the left column, so the pie. Definitely make sure that you have, even if it's just in an Excel sheet, those 14 pies, those 14 ESG KPIs that you can report on. Afterwards, so you can almost see this slide as a journey. Definitely
Yeah.
start with tier one, then you can go to the GRI standards. Depending on also what kind of ESG strategy you would like to pursue, you can look into the standards and say, out of all those, I don't know how many KPIs they have in terms of ESG, we pick those because they're relevant for us, because we would like to disclose them to maybe, yeah, clients, our staff. So definitely tier one, this is something that you should start as of today. Tier two and tier three, this is for, I would say, the more convinced ones that would really like to take a deep dive into ESG reporting.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks for the question. So I would like to explain you on this slide the difference between scope 1, scope 2, and scope 3 emissions, simply that you can associate those three terms because you will find them again in your pies. Scope 1 is very small, just applied or just attributed to a few of your branch offices probably. This is the vehicles that your company owns, the generators that you have. So really everything that you burn yourself is an easy way to remember. Any yeah electricity that you generate by burning it itself. Scope 2, this is the electricity that you purchase in your offices. Again, the share is rather small. And scope 3, this is really where we're looking into the portfolio. This is all the emissions that you finance by granting the loans to your end borrowers. And this makes then the final 90% of the total carbon footprint. This is the last poll from my side. So who is already reporting on their scope one on their scope emissions? Dear Shimon, if from my side I could give you the last time or if you could share one more time the poll here. So who is reporting on scope one emissions, scope two, scope three, and maybe we have here a few uh, outliers who report on all three. 10 more seconds. I see a lower amount of responses coming in. Okay, yes, Shimon, if you could kindly share with everybody. We have more than half that report on scope 1 emissions. Again, perfectly 1/3 who report on scope 2. Nobody who reports, so this, yeah, nobody who reports on scope 3, which is not exactly correct because we have 2 persons that report on all 3. So that of course comprises scope 3 emissions. And to let you know that this is also what we face, that most of the companies, microfinance institutions and banks do not report on scope 3 because it is so vast. You have to also take into consideration every business travel that you undertake, that every person and employee in your company undertakes. I would share with you in a few minutes a link to a methodology that we think is best to come up with calculating scope 3 emissions. But having said that, it's a methodology, it's not a tool. So as of our knowledge at the moment, there is no sound tool where you can simply, in an easy way, compute what are your scope 3 emissions. In fact, for all of those who already access funding from regulated European impact funds, most likely you have already received a questionnaire on those 14 pies. And what the industry, we have a policy, we have an advocacy group that currently says it is too difficult for the microfinance sector to report on scope 3 emissions. For that reason, we use proxies. But yeah, for those who are interested, I would share this methodology, and then you would have to come up with a tool yourself. I will, for this next slide, move out from this deep dive that we took into e-environment, more again into this broader scope of ESG, and this one slide that may have been on your mind since we have been speaking about the regulation SFDR that mentions the pies, and since then maybe you have been wondering, okay, now what are those 14 pies? Yannick still hasn't shared the link in the chat yet, so I would like to see something a little bit more specific. I didn't want to share just a list here. That's why I've been trying to cluster it to make it also, well, visually more appealing and so that it stays in the head. Basically, we see 4 main clusters that those 14 pies can be categorized in. The first is climate and environment. We have been looking into scope 1, scope 2, scope 3 emissions, and you can see other indicators here on the right-hand side, such as the energy consumption that you use for your offices, for your headquarters that come from non-renewable sources. The second one is resource use. What is the amount and the share of electricity that you use, the water that you consume? Social and employee, this is something that we, from our experience when we partner with institutions, see almost everybody has, or where we also see there's a big confidence in speaking about those kind of indicators because they have been collected to a certain extent. You can see on the right-hand side that what is the amount of violations against UN Global Compact, what is the board gender diversity, all this is data that many institutions may already be collecting. And last but not least, governance. So here we're really talking about the different policies that are in place to prevent, for example, corruption, bribery, or discrimination. So this is the overall, I would say, categorization. And again, the full list I will disclose in a few minutes. Here, I just wanted to give, for those who may not yet be familiar with the Global Reporting Initiative, just an overview of what it is. As I've been mentioning, it is the most widely used. And this slide is really for all of you who are already reporting according to the Global Reporting Initiative and that are not yet reporting with regards to the principal adverse impact indicators. If you do that, there's a 70% overlap. So the chances that you already report on those pies that investors request you to report on, and if you have already GRI, the chances are quite high that more than 2/3 of the indicators you already fill out. This is just a direction of travel where I would like to showcase you where's the regulation going to in the next few years, or what are we seeing, what are the tendencies, especially when we look at the European Commission. So maybe just to take a step back when it comes to EU regulation about sustainable finance. Some of you may know that in 2018, the European Commission has been coming up with an action plan on sustainable finance. And this was really the starting point where we could see in there, it was said what will be regulated in the years to come when it comes to ESG. And there already aspects were mentioned of what then translated into the SFDR, which came into effect in 2021, and then further regulations such as the CSRD. Maybe important notice with regards to the SFDR, what I have seen, and this is really a recommendation that I can give to anybody, the European Commission, when it comes to ESG regulation and sustainable finance regulation, has a regular newsletter that you can just subscribe and then you get the updates. What is happening with regards to the SFDR, that since it has been operational since 2021, I don't remember exactly which month, I think March or June, they now had a few years where they had practitioners that needed to implement the sustainable finance disclosure regulation. And now the European Commission wanted to know, okay, so what is your experience with it? Is it really helping you? Is it just a reporting burden? What is your feedback? This consultation stage has ended, and now I believe the European Commission is in the stage of working on an update of the SFDR, and it is expected to come out at the end of this year. If we have anybody from the European Commission here with us who has more information, please share this. And yeah, this is the important update to take into consideration. If you ask me, I'm more than sure that that reporting on those 14 pies, this will definitely stay, also because it is not something that is impossible to do. So definitely for all those countries that would like to, or that are on the brink of joining the EU or to access it, countries like Albania, Serbia, and North Macedonia that are here with us in the webinar, where we can see is that they have to adapt more and more those standards. Their regulators are trying to incorporate the EU standards then for their countries. So what is the main key takeaway from this slide? If you haven't started ESG reporting, we recommend you starting it, because more and more the tendency is going towards obliging you to report on the sustainability of your operations and of your portfolio. I have only two more slides, and then you finally get to hear a new verse. This is
And we have Yannick,
yeah,
we have a question to which
perfect.
Pratibha responded, but maybe you
Yeah,
also
perfect. I
want
didn't see
would
it.
like to comment on it. It's from John Maishak. John, nice to have you on this call. It's been a long time. So, John's question is for FIs, financial institutions, aren't the Scope 3 emissions the most important? Scope 1 and 2 are quite insignificant. It's the financed emissions, the polluting companies which the FIs, the financial institution is financing. That should be the primary focus. And Pratibha answered that yes, that's correct, John. Scope 3 is almost 90% that comes from the loan portfolio. And it must be the focus. Unfortunately, we see that smaller institutions are still not mapping it adequately. Anything that you would like to add to this, to Pratibha's response on this one?
I think most important for you, John, is to note that the situation that you're facing is almost every microfinance institution is facing at the moment. I think we have had one great institution that we met in Kosovo, that they were following this methodology of how to come up with of how to calculate and compute scope 3 emissions, but this is the only one I have seen so far. So the situations that you're facing is what most of them are facing. For that reason, what this advocacy group has come up with is to say we simply use proxies. So you simply say, I cannot report this at the moment, and then I don't know, I haven't been involved too much into this this kind of collecting the pies for the portfolio companies that we work with, but simply they say we use this proxy to say approximately we, based on the amount of persons that we have, of the probably balance sheet size, this should be the scope 3 emissions that we emit. But yes, this is the current status. It would be interesting if somebody from the European Commission would be here to say what their stance is. Will they be more stricter on regulating and to say, okay, We don't want you to work with proxies for the next 3 years. In 3 years, you need to have your own methodology to come up with some computation that comes as close as possible to what your scope 3 emissions are.
Is there anyone from the European Commission that's ready to comment on this, provide some feedback? If yes, you can make yourself visible. If not now, then at some later stage, perhaps. Thanks.
Okay. Then on this slide, I would share with you 3 practical steps in case that you're one of those who responded. We do not have an ESG reporting system at the moment. This entire topic is new to us. Maybe this is why I also subscribed or registered for this webinar, just to get a basic understanding. 3 simple steps that we recommend to undertake as of now is, first of all, is to see what are the ESG KPIs that I would like to report on. So by now, if I would ask anybody of you in here, I hope I would get the answer. Well, definitely those 14 pies, and then additionally all the ESG KPIs that are relevant to our institution, maybe because management would like to track it, maybe because the community has been requesting it, maybe because we are working with a microfinance fund that, apart from those 14 PISs, we would like to see those additional ESG KPIs to report it on. So this is step number 1. What do I need to report on?
So what's universally recognized first, and then whatever on top of that we need as an institution to feel comfortable fulfilling our mission, the board expectations, any other dimensions of your institutions.
Exactly, absolutely, and I would even say that this is not some this in Germany we say this is a living document. That means this is not something that you set up
Mm.
once and that you never make changes upon. So when I was working back at Investment Visions, what we were having a situation where one of the investors, it was a church bank, that was saying, I would like to know specifically what is the share of female borrowers that you support. So this was not an ESG KPI that we had been collecting from the portfolio companies before, but that we then needed to include. So this is a situation that those that are here present with us today, the microfinance institutions and banks, that depending on the investor, maybe because they request or they get external funding from a completely new investor, may ask you for additional new ESG KPIs. And then you simply, include them into your list. So again, this is a living document that
Mhm.
we recommend reviewing on a regular basis, because really ESG, what we saw back in 2015, where I think it started to become the mainstream. In the past, it was seen as a risk management tool. So you have environment, social, and governance. To what extent can those 3 pillars impact the financial health of my institution? But what we have seen in the past, and I heard this many times, I was in the US last month, is that ESG is a framework now used for value creation. How can you actually use ESG as a strategic tool to either increase your revenues or decrease your costs? So this is really what we invite everybody also that we work with to perceive ESG as that, as more of a strategic tool that can also steer growth.
Yeah. And excuse me, Yannick, we
Yeah,
have
no, please.
one more comment on scope 3 emissions. I'm European investor, and we are collecting data from the MFIs that advance GLP according to NAC code to calculate emissions, scope 3, and we are using proxies from an external data provider, Impact Institute. Until
Okay.
now, the group is using two data. Sorry, it's moved. The conversation has moved, and I can't see where it is. All right. Until now, the group is using two data providers, Impact Institute and Joint Impact Model, so two sources of external impact data. And anything you want to add to this? And for
I would
now, we
sim-
will continue the work with proxy data for emissions calculations as FDR is allowing proxy data, but we are waiting for the changes of SFDR to 0 to see if we can continue working with proxy data, as MFIs are now providing us this data.
Perfect.
So it's
I would
more
say
like a
thank you very much for the contribution. This is then a name that all those microfinance institutions and banks that are present here with us can then maybe refer to when they would like to report on scope 3 emissions. So yeah, thank you very much for sharing this. I will well, let me do this right now. I hadn't opened the chat, but then
Sorry
I will.
about interrupting. Yeah, carry
No,
on.
no, please. Then this is maybe the perfect opportunity to share with you what we have been coming across, which is this methodology of computing the scope 3 emissions, but definitely more cumbersome, I believe, than using the tool that was recommended by,
Yeah.
I don't know what who that person was. I haven't seen the chat, but definitely thank you for the contribution. And there's a name to refer to then for, and especially also external data provider. As soon as you have decided in step number 1, what are the ESG KPIs that you would like to report on, come up with a data architecture. Now, this is it sounds very appealing, the name data architecture. What it mainly is in the most simple ways, of course, just in Excel. So if you would like to start to get today, you open a new Excel sheet, you paste in column A those 14 pies, column B, C, D, you put the time frame, and we recommend you on a monthly basis to start collecting those 14 pies. So that's what it's meant with data architecture. For those who would like to take it to the next step, we have on the next slide an ESG reporting tool that we recommend that we also work with that is completely digital. Because as you can imagine, to collect all this data in Excel is just the starting point. But it's a good starting point because, well, in tabular format, you have then all the data that is available, that is being requested by you. And we have seen also impact investors that, well, basically then report it also in the tabular format. What is very important based on our experience is that you have, as I initially mentioned, one ESG data owner. That means there's one person that is responsible for caring about this file, making sure that on a monthly basis you receive the data points from the different departments and that, well, they are as accurate as possible. So this is something from a governance perspective that is coming from governance perspective, ownership. That means really assign one person. Maybe you have recently employed or for a longer time already an ESG officer, then this would be an additional task if he or she is not yet working on that. That would be on their desk as of today, what we recommend. And then really make this a habit of we suggest monthly basis, collect this data and see also how it changes from a monthly basis. As I mentioned just before, really see ESG not only as a reporting exercise, but something that can also be used strategically to steer, well, your growth and maybe also cut costs. If you're at this stage and you have implemented those 3 steps, then you're already at a point where you can start designing, compiling your first ESG report. I remember we had, I think, 28% that haven't done that yet, that are planning about this. In that case, I hope that for those 2 groups, then if you walk through those 3 steps, you know that you're very close to then, compiling and publishing your first ESG report with the different stakeholders that you have. This brings me to my last slide and the tool that I would like to share with you. Just to give you full disclaimer, we do not get any commission for this. We recommend this tool because we have been working with them for many years. We know the owners who do a fantastic job and they have been rewarded also for the work that they do. I believe in 2019, they won the Sustainability Award here in Germany for the tool that they have created. It is called Hedera. It's a Berlin-based company that is led by Alfonso Cayazzo and Natalia Realpe. And we use it for our internal ESG reporting. Big advantage. So remember the ESG officer that as of today is now responsible for coming up with the ESG data in an Excel file. Maybe he or she will be sending on a monthly basis the the one central file to HR and say, hey, please give me the current diversity of our board. And he or she will send it back. Now, all of you know that this is creating so many errors, or it can lead to so many errors and can lead to a tremendous loss of data accuracy. For that, this tool is really fantastic. Everything is collected centrally. You can have different users that you onboard and that can afterwards, well, simply introduce and share the ESG data of their respective department. That means, in very specific terms, instead of sending the file to the HR department, you would simply create a user for them and they can then fill out the ESG data themselves. This brings me to the end of this first half of the webinar. I hope it has been insightful.
But Yannick, before we let you go, there is one more question to you.
Please.
So the question comes from Evgenia. So I simply can't see all of your names, guys, because of the background and the font color. But Evgenia is asking you to provide a more detailed explanation of the concept of double materiality in ESG reporting, including how small-sized banks are expected assess, apply, and document it in practice.
Yeah, so double materiality, for those who may not know, is that you're trying to, so you have your company and you have ESG, environment, social, and governance. And previously, what you have been trying to see is that to what extent is ESG affecting your business from financial terms? So to what extent can a drought in your agricultural portfolio affect, well, the portfolio quality that you have? Now, this new concept of double materiality says, okay, but you as a company also have an effect on ESG. Of course, the most obvious one is on the environment. We have been looking into scope 1, scope 2, scope 3. So this is my personal recommendation. The concept of double materiality really has been introduced with the CSRD, Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive, and the European standards, European Sustainability Reporting Standards. This is, if you remember, only applying if you're a company based in the EU that meets one of those three criteria: more than 250 employees, more than 20 million in balance sheet size, or more than 40 million in turnover. This is, as you're stating correctly in your chat, it's a huge reporting burden. At this stage, I would not, again, please don't quote me, I would not further consider this at this stage because it's too much reporting burden on MFIs. Plus, you're not, how do you say, you do not fall under this regulation. But I mean, this is what I assume. Please tell me yeah, let's take both scenarios. Actually, regulated is the word that I was looking for. I assume that you do not fall under this regulation. If you fall under this regulation, then of course, what do you have to do? Well, you have to, and I will share with you the link in a few minutes, go to the full list of the ESRS. I haven't counted them, but it's a long list. I think more than 100 or 200 ESG KPI data points. What is my recommendation on how to compile those? I don't have one. If you're regulated, then yeah, the job is to make sure that you can come up with the data. As with everything in life, I would go step by step, see what is the data that you already have, and then make an action plan on how you can collect the ones that are missing.
Yannick, if I may, sorry, Pratibha will speak in a while. I just want to add to this. Yannick just mentioned also about the materiality assessment, right? And what that essentially means is what is material to your organization. So what are the sectors you're focusing on? What are the topics? And I really encourage, maybe you want to have a look on the Global Reporting Initiative, which was also mentioned, which have different sector standards, different topic standards, to also identify what is then really relevant to my context, what is more material. So let's say if I'm really focusing on the like the large part of the portfolio is into agriculture, then I look at that topic and I look at that sector and identify what is then fitting more for my institution. So yeah, GRI would also be a good start in this regard, just to add.
Okay, very good. Excellent. Thanks. And there's one more question. Shall we tackle it right now before we pass the mic over to Pratibha?
Let's do it.
Okay, good.
Perfect
So the
time.
question comes from Boris. When we collect data from clients and need data on various underserved population groups, for example, we need data on the gender or disability, etc. We are faced with laws such as GDPR that state that these are special groups of data and there must be a basis for their collection. How can we get these special data that we would use for ESG activities and reporting?
So the key is that you are able to report on these data for your portfolio. When there are GDPR issues, I would then do it anonymized, because in the end, the way that you have to report it then to the fund that you're accessing the funding from, they do not want to have personalized data. They want to have it in an aggregated way. So how you, yeah, that would be my suggestion. But of course, if the challenge is at the source that you cannot even from the person that you're borrowing to receive this data, I'll be very honest with you. I don't have a specific. I don't have an answer. Before giving a wrong answer, I'll be honest with you. I don't have one. All I can say is that if there is a chance for you to access this data, maybe through the loan officers when they're present, giving out the loan or collecting back the money, if there's a way to collect this data, I would try to get it and then anonymize it, because in any case it will be then aggregated on your portfolio level.
Okay, excellent. Thanks. Thank you.
Okay.
So, a bit of a break for Yannick.
Yes, and it will become much more practical.
Yeah,
Pratibha will
let's
share
get
with you of how to do and how not to do things. Yeah, Pratibha, I'll
let's
give
get
over.
more let's get more practical with Pratibha. Over to you, Pratibha.
Yes, thank you so much, Gregor, and thank you so much, Yannick, for setting the stage. I also want to thank everybody, like we said at the beginning, to devote your time to this. That's also a very good signal for us that this topic is important and relevant. We just before we again deep dive into some practices, I want to show you some examples of how to not do things. So we have been talking about climate risks, transition risks, impact, green finance, etc. But that can also sometimes project misleading claims. Even if the intent is there to accumulate and accommodate ESG principles. Sometimes if it's not really fitting in the larger framework of the organization, what we are actually doing versus what we are communicating to our external stakeholders, and many ways, let's say, not really walking the talk. Even though these two examples, and Yannick, you can also go to the next, these two examples are from bigger institutions. That doesn't mean that it cannot happen to institutions, financial institutions that are operating at a low scale, because we expect that these institutions would have the framework, right, would have their architecture, governance strategies in place and wouldn't go wrong. But even at this level, it does happen. So the first example is, of course, the DWS branch of the Deutsche Bank, which had a lot of false claims and portrayed itself as an ESG leader when on the other hand, their claims were not really substantiated in real practices. And the whistleblower, there was a whistleblower who actually falsified all these claims, which resulted into a big penalty, loss of reputation, loss of trust, and transparency. Why do these failures happen? Because when we are talking, we've spent so much time today talking about reporting, but we have to understand that this reporting is not an isolated phenomena. It's very much embedded in the people, in the practices, in the policies, in the frameworks that an institution has. So where does it really, in this case, where does it really show the failure? Let's say at the board level, these ESG claims that were then communicated were approved. So it clearly reflects that there were no checks and measures to really identify, are these claims right? Are these claims wrong? No internal verification policy. And then what happens? Boom, like, there's a whistleblowing phenomena, and then the whistleblower was also fired in the end. So that also shows that there was no protection mechanism for the whistleblower. And imagine if this particular institution is reporting in impact reports and making all these claims, whereas the reality shows something else, that doesn't really fare well. The next example is from the UK, HSBC, and this is where you see a very good case of transition washing. At the beginning, Yannick mentioned several kind of risks. You have the physical climate risk, which is, of course, in the form of real-time events. They could be more long-term, as, let's say, loss of glacier, which is probably we're not affected by it on a day-to-day basis, but we will be. The other is more acute risks that are happening now. So in the EU, for example, you have the heat waves, you have wildfires in Greece, in other parts of the world, you have floods. So that has an impact. But then transition washing is really how climate, external factors such as climate or even regulatory push, some kind of technological change in the market, that is telling us to transition towards what Yannick said at the beginning, to a more low carbon economy, or let's say net zero economy, right? And so when we are saying that we are taking care of these transition risks, but this is actually just a PR strategy with no real basis of, or it's not really situated in the DNA of our organization, it can go really wrong. Here we see an example where, on one hand, HSBC was giving advertisements about how they are really working towards achieving net zero by 2050, etc. On the other hand, they were still massively supporting in fossil fuel companies. And this was the first time that the security authority even banned the ads and calling it greenwashing. So this is also a classical case where ESG is not a PR exercise. It's not just for communications. It's for real actions, real intentions, and really putting the accountability and checks and measures in place. So please remember, greenwashing, impact washing, and transition washing, that this actually does happen to organizations at various scales. Moving on now, we have seen two now very, very bad examples. And I would like now Shimon to please start the poll. And the question is really for you to highlight if this particular statement is a red flag or a green flag for ESG practice or ESG reporting. So there's 72 people right now I'm seeing. Let's have probably 30 seconds or so to see. Okay, a bit more so that at least over 50 have answered. Okay, now, maybe I think, Shimon, please, you can also display the results. We see, of course, 66% say it's a red flag, which is the correct answer. So congratulations, you won. Impact reports with zero negative data. So this is, again, a big, big red flag, because when we are reporting on our positive and negative impacts, it's also in framework language, it's also called as actual and potential impact. So what are the actual impact that we are currently having on people and the planet, and what could be the potential impact, right? So also planning long term, and that will not always result in a positive data. So if I'm only reporting, look, I'm contributing so much to gender equality, I'm contributing so much to climate oriented policies, that does not give the external stakeholders a real picture. Imagine a situation like this, that we are getting funding for cleaner agricultural technologies, but we operate in areas where certain farmers are still or agricultural holders are still quite dependent on pesticides because it's cheaper. Should we just not document this? As we are transitioning to cleaner technologies, we cannot leave the other clients behind. So we have to document that, while we are taking steps, it could also have some negative potential, and that really communicates more transparency and more trust. For example, if I say, okay, right now I don't have a gender pay gap policy, or I'm not tracking that data, that's not a positive data, but that's full transparency, because you're disclosing that, okay, this is something we have an intent for, or probably we didn't even know that we should be doing this, but now we know, and now is the time to take right steps in the direction. Okay, so we can close this poll and let's move on to the next. So, mapping your loan portfolio against climate risks. Is this a good practice or a negative reporting risk? Okay, I'm seeing a resounding green flag. Okay. Yeah, so we can close. I think we have a good picture here, and we can show the results. You see that it's a obvious green flag. Of course, we should map our loan portfolio against climate risks. You'll be surprised to know that also some institutions that we work with, this is something that still people do not do. And it's not that they don't want to, it's just that the data is not there. So everybody is doing something, but they cannot prove it because they're not collecting the data. And this really has to go, what we mentioned about the loan officers. Let's say if they are base level all the way to the top, this not just need to be mapped, this needs to be reported, these claims have to be verified, there have to be checks and measures in place. So climate risks, also clients climate vulnerability, their sectors, how they're impacted, geographies, how they're impacted, these are things that still unfortunately many institutions are not doing. And it's also because it is very complicated. And but this is something, as we have learned today with the regulations, etc., will also come soon. Okay, moving on to the next poll. So social key performance indicators that only measure disbursements and not borrower well-being. Is this a good ESG practice or a big red flag? Okay, let's give some time. Okay. Great. So I already see there's a resounding agreement. Please, Shimon, you can display the results. You're absolutely right. It is a red flag, and this is just what we've been talking about in today's webinar when we speaking about risks. When we're speaking about impact and transition, we have to not forget the well-being of those we work for. So one thing is just, let's say now we have loans for women entrepreneurs, or now we have loans for clean energy loans, and we are just measuring that, look, we have been giving it, to a lot of clients, and there's big acceptance for it, but they're not really mapping how they are doing. Very good example is also something that happened in the Bangladesh MFI sector, where there was an increasing push from financial institutions to support maize crop as a climate resilient crop. So everybody, most of the institutions, they started meeting out loans for this particular purpose. But what they didn't really realize that increasingly it was also promoting monoculture, so absolutely working against what the real intent was. And at the same time, there was soil degradation, and a lot of borrowers were getting over indebted because there was really no other means. So not all the time the KPIs that we think we have set might automatically translate into borrower well-being if it's not being frequently mapped, if the impacts are not really taken into account. Okay, so the last poll in this regard. Green labels on products with third-party verification. Is this a good or a bad practice? Okay, let's wait a bit. Okay, we have almost 42% people that have answered. But great, Shimon, you can probably also disclose the results. This is also a resounding green flag, 88% agree with me. I also really encourage, to probably write in the chat those who have a third-party verification for green labels on products. Because again, this is something, through our work, we do see that there is an increase in the percentage of loan portfolio that is dedicated to green finance, but we have rarely seen that it has been verified by a third party. And those who don't,
also,
sorry,
to interrupt, but it will be also interesting to hear from those who think that who do not agree with you, basically what the reasons are for that, just
exactly. Please, also if those who said that as a red flag, I'm also keen to understand why, why would you say so? So I really encourage, please.
Okay, sorry about interrupting.
No, it's absolutely, I'm curious. Maybe somebody, some volunteers.
Yeah, people can do that, just in the course of the
Okay.
organizing day.
Okay,
Yeah.
maybe towards the end when we also wrap up,
Exactly.
I'll really encourage
That's a
people
good
to do
idea.
that. Okay. Yes. So looking at this spectrum, right, of where our institution sits, of course, this is not something that we can disclose publicly. All of us know where the institutions sit, and this is also not, it's also not to reflect that there's a vicious intent to do intentional fraud or have misleading claims. But like the examples that I showed you, if checks and measures are not in place, if there is no data to verify, if we are not really, building that architecture for reporting, we may unintentionally, unfortunately, go towards, the red or the darker yellow area.
That's a great, great thought.
And,
Yes,
and
we
trust
may be
me that,
greenwashing
yes,
unintentionally. That's an important thing, So
exactly.
unless we have data supporting us, just we may be making false claims
Yeah,
based on wishful thinking.
yeah, yeah. And even if, as much as we are trying to navigate this very data on well-being, even if we are trying to, navigate this very complex landscape, we see that most of the institutions would sit somewhere in the middle. So they are neither, dark red nor dark green yet, even though, as Yannick has mentioned, the direction of travel might lead us to that direction. But it's not really. It's something that I think most of the institutions have to work on. Before I move further, there is just a question, Gregor. Do you mind
Yes,
if
there's
I?
a question. That's correct. How do you suggest that data on well-being is gathered?
Mhm.
Is it gathered through clients' surveys?
Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much, Des McCarthy, for your question. Yes, you're right. Client surveys are a very good tool to do that. Let's say we also probably organizations like 60 decibels who are also collecting client level data. Social impact, environmental impact data, which is again, getting it done from a third party, has more transparency and less of biasness from you. It could be through phone interviews, it could be through interaction of really your people on the ground, for example loan officers, or even at the branch level. So I hope this answers your question. Reporting should not be of intent but of actual facts based on results supported by data. Correct,
Absolutely correct. We
Dr.
can like
Khan?
it. Yeah.
Absolutely agree. Again, I just want to, show some more examples. We did this green flag, red flag exercise, but
Mhm.
so that you can really internalize, and take this with you. Some of the other green flags could be, though not only, is like we said, we talked about climate mapping portfolio, but then also adding that climate lens to credit officer training. Like one thing is, okay, saying in our policies that we do it, but how we channelizing this further? Like what is the actual implementation? Is this policy just sitting in a PDF format, or is it actually being lived in reality, right? Uh, a red flag, ESG report that's published annually, but board has never formally discussed its contents. Of course, this is not how it should be. Like I said, ESG report is not just the communications team to make a great PDF and good design. It's also who's responsible, who's accountable, has it been verified? ESG agenda item that appears at every board meeting, not just annually. So again, uh, really making sure that this is on the agenda and this is not just appearing and disappearing. In our work, sometimes when we're asking about how are ESG aspects being discussed at the board level or at the management level, people say, yes, it's discussed, but there is no proof. So, do you have minutes? Do you have board minutes? Do you have some kind of presentation, something that you can show us? Because how else, if you're reporting it, how else should we do? And should we verify this claim, right? And even if, let's say, there is an intent and it's actually being discussed, if you're not documenting it, if you're not putting this data together, it may misfire. Again, like I said, your environmental social management system just exists as a document, but loan officers have never been trained on it. Big red flag. Green finance targets that are met by shifting to urban and formal clients, quietly dropping rural poor. So, for example, when we see green finance, and so there has to also be an acceptance at the client level for this. They also need to be made aware. They can be client level, community level trainings. But then if we say, okay, just to increase the number, let me just go where it's more comfortable and ignore the rest. That's also not the solution. And again, sustainable finance targets. So there are good targets, good measures and metrics in place, but it's still continuing with business as usual lending, which was also in the example that we saw.
Excuse me, there's one more question. If we
Yeah.
could go into it right now, how to strike balance between disbursement for meeting targets and profits and ROI for investor versus commitment to ESG aligned disbursement.
Yeah.
Strike balance between disbursement for meeting targets and profits and ROI for investor versus commitment to ESG aligned disbursement.
Yeah.
Would you like me to take this one, Pratibha?
Yeah, please go ahead. Go ahead, Yannick. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Dr. Akil. I would say it completely depends on the highest governance body or who your investors are. So we have been facing situations with the companies that we work with where the investor is saying, okay, we operate in microfinance, we have a large equity share in your institution, but we do this because we're in here for the profits. We have seen that the margins are good and that in the end, like you're mentioning, the ROI for us as an investor is quite high. In that case, the investor decides. If this company is majority owned by you, then you set the agenda. So to put it in the most simple terms, I would say wherever the money is coming from and gets to decide.
The owners decide.
The owners decide, yeah.
Okay. Very good.
Thank you, Yannick. And Dr. Khan, probably towards the end of this presentation, you'll also receive a signal why, it would get increasingly more important that ESG aligned disbursements would rule the roost and not otherwise. Yeah, please, next. Yeah. Again, what we have been addressing today, it does matter. These green flags and red flags, and keeping this in mind does matter, because we are seeing cases that at the EU level right now, but I'm sure also elsewhere, prosecution of green washing. So that would be punishable, or there would be a penalty. The examples from other countries who are also issuing climate risk disclosure frameworks. So it means that there's no looking away, right? It is going to come. Boards are being held personally liable in some jurisdictions, and the watchdogs, so to say, the journalists, the civil society actors, the community in general, I would say there's a much larger awareness on ESG issues than it was ever before. So in our respective country or regional context, we may have also seen that there are protests there. Yeah, so it's not something that we can insulate ourselves from anymore. Yeah.
I have a question. Do ESG reports get audited by any chance?
We would say as a best practice, they should be audited. This is something that also through our work we really motivate our partners that internal or external auditing mechanisms, whatever they're looking at. But this is something that is not or should not be situated in a silo department, that only ESG department did it, and now nobody else has to do with it. So the audit department, other committees should also be. It should really be part of all the pillars, or at least embedded in all the pillars, but with clear responsibilities and accountability, so that it's also not everybody's job, because that's when it gets diluted.
And maybe just to quickly add to your question, Grzegorz, that all the companies that fall under CSRD regulation, they're the ESG reports, they need to be integrated into the annual report, and they are being audited.
There you go. Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yannick, you can put all the pillars. Yeah. So this is something that we brought these 4 pillars from the task force climate related financial disclosures. Probably it's also not relevant for everybody yet, but and this is also increasingly becoming a task force nature related financial disclosure, so not climate anymore just, but also looking at nature, which could probably be the topic of another webinar because it's another huge topic. But really to for us, like we are also saying that reporting is not just facts and data, but it is situated in the framework of our institution, of our organization, our context, our clients, etc. So it does not, it has to have hands and legs in order to operate. So the primary basis is governance, like who's accountable, right? We are doing ESG reporting, everything is nice, but who's accountable really? Is there board oversight of our ESG risks and opportunities? Is the management involved? What is their role and responsibility? Committees, I was mentioning committees, do they have a mandate? So these are also things for us to think about. The senior management, are there bonuses and performance, is that linked to ESG KPIs? Honestly, we still see in many institutions there is no variable remuneration that's linked to ESG metrics yet, which is so are we just talking in vacuum about ESG reporting without really doing the basic work, which is where is it situated in our organizations? Do we have the skills and competency to even talk and take this further? The next comes strategy. So again, what I said about actual and potential impact of our social risks, of our governance or climate risks. So really looking at what is happening right now, but also what could happen in the future. Because we know that there is climate change. We know that there would be transition risks. We are already seeing it. We are seeing it in electro cars. We are seeing it everywhere. So it is there, but how we prepared for it? What is our strategy under different kind of futures? What is our transition plan? I'm supposing most of the smaller institutions still don't have the transition plan, the just transition plan. Probably it's not even the vocabulary that we are using. So, but it doesn't mean that we shouldn't, because as we are seeing that increasingly frameworks are getting more complicated, they're getting more enhanced. And so this will come. And for us, the task is to prepare ourselves better for the future. Then comes risk management. So now we have mapped the risks, the actual and potential impacts. Now, how do we manage it? Trust me, still we see organizations, they will have an ESG policy, and then we'll see their credit risk or risk policy, operational risk. No mention of climate, no mention of social. So these are not all standalone procedures and policies. They have to walk together. They cannot operate in silos. And so this is something when we are developing an ESMS, when we are talking about exclusion lists, etc., we have to see that that's coherent, that it's uniform across our institutional fabric and not speaking to each other, really. There's no conversation between departments or policies. So that could be a red flag as we mature more or as the world is getting more and more complex. Last but not the least, we can only manage what we measure. So metrics and disclosure, very important. We were talking about scope 1, scope 2, scope 3. So what is really, our financed emissions? What is the vulnerability of our clients to climate? For example, we still see in our work that some of the institutions or most of the institutions follow in this radar where, okay, there's some assessment of climate risks, but not really mapping how vulnerable clients are across sectors, across geographies, across other parameters, or even extreme weather events. How are they being reported? What is their strategy? So this is something that's still not being done yet, and you see in the strategy, there is an opportunity that we can do stress testing, we can do scenario analysis, and how that can really feed into this. And annual ESG disclosure to funders and stakeholders, and really reporting our progress against transition plan targets. So whatever we are reporting on has to have a goal, a metric, a target. Because when you're telling me, yes, I'm doing a lot to reduce CO2 emissions, but then there is no metric. Okay, I plan to reduce my CO2 emissions by 20% till the year 2032, for example. You may not achieve it, and that's fine, but putting that target onto paper, into your strategies, will help you plan further, and it'll also show that you have a clear intent and you're working towards it. Okay. Another good example of a good bank, but we also have some other best practices. I really encourage those who don't know, and probably some of the Triodos Bank example, of what really works. So we can see that they have transparency. Every organization they finance is publicly disclosed. In their climate strategy, there's a clear vocabulary for just transition, and that is not just an add-on, but it really has factored the intent and measures for client well-being. And there's a board level exclusion list. So it's really taking all that architecture up till there, and not just as a PR exercise. But let's move on to the other best practices, please. Yeah. So these are some smaller institutions. Also, for those of you who would be interested, please have a look. The Amalgamated Bank with their net zero climate target report. So this is a bank in Armenia, and they have a net zero plan, and they report on this. So those of you who are probably looking at doing this, encourage you to look at it. ESG performance in the annual report. Probably most of you also do it, but this is an example from Crystal Bank in Georgia. They were also recently in one of our trainings, and they report on their ESG progress, both positive and negative, that we saw at the beginning, as well as the UN SDGs, so Sustainable Development Goals, and really map their progress as it is. And this is also something that could be interesting. Banco Sol from Bolivia, they are already reporting as per the GRI framework, which is what we have been talking about. Probably we are not that big, or the scale is not that big yet, but it does help to see what's happening in the sector and who's doing what. And then is the partner MFI example, with ESG standards embedded into their business model. And I think they have also come for a webinar at SIFTA, if I'm not mistaken. Okay. This is very important. We've been talking about, and we can go through all the slides, Yannick, the regulatory horizon. So where is your country right now? And this is something probably looks very, very complicated and dense already, and I don't want to discourage you. Please, when you get the slides, also have a look. I'm sure all of you, who are very close to your work, very close to your context, already know this. But our message is, everybody, no matter where we are right now, we are on the regulatory horizon. And what matters now is whether we choose to fall behind or we are ahead of what's coming for us. So we can see based on, the partners' geographies that are there in the webinar, we have categorized at various levels. The most advanced is, of course, most of the countries in the EU, including also the United States. There are some key frameworks at the moment, but there's also more complications, more complexities, more mature frameworks that will be coming soon. Progressive, as Yannick had also mentioned, some of the EU, adjacent countries or those who will be participating soon or have the intent to, they're also not so insulated from this. So even from their central banks, national banks, there is a clear framework and a roadmap, and it's gonna come soon. Emerging are, countries such as Ukraine, Armenia, India, Sri Lanka, Kyrgyzstan. Here also, of course, those people who are working with EU funders or probably UK funders, US funders, they are also coming under this horizon, but also in their own national contexts, a lot of work is happening in this regard. And then evolving would be more countries like Kenya, Pakistan, that are also coming up with their own guidelines, and soon, might be it soon might become more mature. So right now we can probably choose, whether it should be voluntary or it should be mandatory, but eventually for everybody, it's going to get more sophisticated, more complicated. Yeah. Some of the other, I don't want to go so much into detail here, but just for those of us who operate at a different scale, and we completely understand that probably GRI and everything is too up there, but there are also other frameworks that are closer to us. Which we can really pack it into all the ESG domains. We've talked about TCFD, the pillar frameworks already. GRI specifically, has come up now with the climate change standard. So also for those of you who feel I'm not like there yet, or I really don't know where to start, this is something you can also look at. The IFRS standard 2 is specifically talking about climate-related disclosure standards. The IFC performance standards, those of you who are dependent on DFI funding probably are already doing that or aware. Of course, we have the series, SPTF, the Green Finance Index, the Alliance for Financial Inclusion, which it's usually regulator facing, but can still signal where our national context is heading. And last and not the least is, of course, AFSR, which is Agents for Impact, a proprietary tool. And this is a self-assessment tool for MFIs to really map where they stand, and could also be treated as a third-party verification. Okay. We can, so we already, Yannick has already given us a good overview of how to set up your ESG reporting system, but this is to again say that ESG reporting system should be embedded, in the entire processes and fabric of the organization. At the beginning, we also assessed where we are. Are we new to ESG? Are we more mature? Are we doing something in this space? So accordingly for you, there are different levels of actions that you could take to proceed in this direction. If you're at a very initial stages, what would be the next step is to really do a diagnosis and assign who's responsible. Like also Yannick was mentioning, who owns the data, who's responsible for this architecture. So really mapping your board committees, your structures, other committees. Does ESG have a home? Does it live there? This is exactly what I was saying, that, credit risk policy, no environment at all. And then ESG policy is claiming, we do all this. So it's not married to each other. A named person with ESG risk accountability, we have already said. keep reviewing your system. Is it active or just a document? And to start with, just let's identify top 3 climate exposed sectors. Like, do we know, if somebody asks us, what are the most exposed? And this is something we also, I would just like to underline this. Some of the times we have institutions telling us, oh, we don't we are not impacted by climate because we are only doing small and medium sized enterprises, or we are not even in agriculture, because most people associate climate directly to agriculture. But that's not the case, because we're talking about transition risks. So when we are talking about enterprises who are probably, we're talking about scope 3 emissions, right? And they are probably discharging waste and waste and effluents into water. They're probably using very old energy intensive techniques. That is also a climate impact. That is our scope 3 emission already. So it is a climate exposed sector, as many believe that no, as long as it's not agriculture, we are safe. If you are more mature in this already, start assessing and designing. So conduct a basic portfolio, vulnerability, have a transition risk, physical climate risk paper, highlight the gaps, see your regulatory requirements. We already showed you some of the aspects that are there in the horizon, and begin mapping scope 3 category 15. And last but not the least, once we have done all the designing and paperwork, is to govern and commit. So present the proposal, seek mandate, integrate constant climate or social screening into your credit committee process, which we unfortunately see still does not happen. Draft a just transition policy. Like I said, there's physical climate risk, but there's also transition risk. And to really also start thinking in this direction and using this vocabulary, because that's what the frameworks are asking us to do. And setting one measurable target for your portfolio, for your product, for your disclosure. It could be something like having more social, more 10% more products, but then also not just running behind numbers, but having, what would be the outputs and the outcomes at the end of it. Yes, with this, I just want to, I've come to the end of this presentation, and I want to just highlight that even though it may seem like a lot and a lot is happening, what our message would really be is do a reflection and take a step back and really see where does your institution and your context stand in this big ESG landscape. What are your requirements? What could be the opportunities? What is doable? What is not doable at this point? And really take it from there. So every start is a start, no matter where we stand on the scale. Important is that all of us who have been here today, I think we all agree that this is coming, and this is an important topic, and not just for reporting. This is also for our own survival, our institutional resilience, resilience for the people we work with. So it's not just a checklist that let's report and get away with the regulation, but this is something that will also help in our long-term institutional resilience, and that is why it is so important. Yeah, and with that, I have come to the end, and please.
Yeah, sure. So thank you so much, Pratibha. We have now time for questions. There's one comment and one question that came through chat, so maybe let me read them, and I will allow you guys to respond to them. So the first is more of a common. Small MFIs have all good intent and commitment, either due to the genesis, DNA, or a strategy to attract investment, but unable to institutionalize the same due to lack of resources. TA support and equity investment can help in strengthening commitment and integrating the mandate within the core of the institution. But the question is small institutions are unable to attract equity, and in absence of same, they lose interest and commitment. So a bit of a vicious circle here described. And the question, what are your thoughts on development of national ESG disclosure guidelines, where we get into interoperability issues, oversimplification, etc. As you showed in your slide, some small countries are taking this path. So I don't know,
Yeah.
Yannick or Pratibha, do you want to comment or share your thoughts on these two things?
Maybe just to do the disclosure question first, if that's okay. That's correct, John, that it could sometimes become too diluted and oversimplified. Our recommendation would be, again, as we said, to really look at what's voluntary, what's mandatory at the moment. Again, who are your stakeholders? If your stakeholders are one is your national, of course, context, but if your stakeholders are elsewhere, what is more relevant for them? And then again, what we have also discussed in our presentation, what is really material to your organization? Because once you have identified that, it will help you navigate this very complex regulatory landscape. So if the national disclosures right now are mandatory, you already know, okay, where do I fit in this mandate? And if they're voluntary, that still gives you an idea of where to develop it or where to take it from there. And to Dr. Khan's, I just want to say that's correct. But I also want to say that the fact that an MFI is small could still, probably look at various trainings or tools that are freely available, to not choose to absolutely do nothing in this direction, because I think that circle would get more complicated and complex if smaller MFIs choose to do nothing at this point. But Yannick, also your opinion on this would be nice.
Thank you so much, Pratibha. You covered the most important aspect. I'll go quickly to John's question. So definitely we see interoperability. If you open, for example, the European standards, European sustainability reporting standards, it's high time for lunch here in Germany. The ESRS, you can see that they are mapping on one side after citing what the indicators are, to what extent they are interoperable with the Global Reporting Initiative. So to answer your question, definitely the regulator is seeing we have different ESG reporting frameworks. How can we actually harmonize them? Some, like I mentioned, ESRS, they already did this, and definitely there is this intent. What we can see, and I forgot to mention this before, with this update of the Sustainable Finance Disclosure Regulation, so the regulation that speaks about the 14 pies, one of the major feedbacks was that definitely there is too much of an ESG reporting burden on the portfolio companies. And so maybe you've heard about the term that that's called omnibus package. And basically the idea is to decrease the ESG reporting burden in order for European companies to still remain, how do you say it, wettbewerbsfähig, Pratibha, competitive with other markets. So what we're expecting with this, let's call it SFDR update, that is expected to come in the second half of the year, is definitely ESG reporting burden will decrease. Now, how does this affect the smaller countries? What we have seen when smaller countries, the regulators are starting to regulate ESG in their countries, they most of the time adhere to Europe. ESG regulation, because Europe is at the forefront. Europe is the ESG regulation pioneer, I would say. This is also what they say in the United States. And we see smaller countries looking, okay, what has Europe come up with in terms of ESG regulation? Let's just adapt this to our country context without reinventing the wheel. And like Pratibha said, step number one is try to see in your regulation, in your jurisdiction, what is compulsory to report, and start there. And otherwise, I would say keep an eye out for second half of the year when the SFDR update will come. I wanted to add to Akhil's comment is that maybe then I would recommend Akhil to map different investor bases, because in case that you get the feedback from impact investors, I imagine you're referring to European impact investors for which you are uninteresting. I'm careful with this word because of your size. Then simply try to see a different nature of investors. I want to share an example with you. For example, in the United States, you have all the philanthropies. You have CSR departments of larger companies such as Google. You have the foundations that play a tremendous role. So all of them, as per their mission, they are looking for your smaller companies that are really focused on impact and focused on creating this positive ESG effects. So I would recommend then looking for other, I wouldn't even say niche investors, because the amounts that they invest are also quite considerable, but maybe kind of investors that not everybody may be looking at in the first stage.
More socially oriented or climate oriented, yeah. Mission oriented. Okay, good. And we have one more, probably last question. Do you have any experience on reporting for fund of funds? We have to report to different donors, shareholders, the activity of different MFIs. We finance, support any known best cases. So it's a question from a representative of a fund of funds who is looking for some sources of expertise on reporting on ESG. So So it's a fund basically. So kind of a fund type of
investing into other funds. We do not have an experience, Bertrand, but what maybe help you, and this is the reality that you're facing, is that you have to aggregate all the ESG, well, especially the 14 pies of the different funds. So we don't have an experience on that, but the objective for you, what you need to report on the regulator is on an aggregated, so depending on what the investment size is that you have for each fund, to aggregate those 14 pies, and depending on the amount.
And there is a PS to this question without so the person, the representative of the fund of funds is looking for information on this, but without overwhelming our local partners that are often small grassroots MFIs or co-ops.
If I may,
please.
I just in one of the slides where I had showed tools for MFI level organizations, and you said you're also working with the MFIs. At Agents for Impact, we are also reporting this data to the funds through our FSR report. So this is something that could also be, because it is giving you a very clear picture of how the MFIs are faring. But you're also talking about, their small and grassroots MFIs. So we have also showed you that there's the SPTF tool, there's the Green Index. So probably this is also something that you can see how they could fill this data. And apart from that, if you need to share this report to your stakeholders, so this is also something that we are doing in the form of the reports that we generate. And we also have a light version of this particular tool, which might be more relevant for smaller MFIs, so that the report that is generated at our end can then be shared with you. And this is also, verified by an external party, in this case ourselves. And that is something that you can also then share with your stakeholders.
Excellent. Thank you so much. I think we've come to the end of this fascinating session. So thank you everyone for your active participation today. We've had, I think, at the peak of the meeting we had something like 73, even 74 participants. Great interest. Thank you for all your questions, reflections, also willingness to engage with us. What we heard from Yannick and Pratibha is quite clear, at least to me, and that is that ESG is no longer sort of a parallel activity, but it's becoming part of the core operating system of every institution, every microfinance institution or social finance provider, including, not because of pressure alone, but because as we heard, it strengthens governance, it improves risk management, but also ultimately builds trust with funders, clients, and also with regulators. So thank you so much. Please bear in mind that this webinar is part of the broader SIFTA program. So I think it's also my duty to encourage you to explore the technical assistance opportunities that are available through SIFTA. Whether you need any support with ESG systems, governance, climate risk reporting, SIFTA is at your disposal. So thank you once again to Yannick and Pratibha for sharing their expertise. It's been a wonderful opportunity to work with you, with Afi again. Thank you, my MFC colleagues, Shimon and Jon, and to all of you for being with us. And we look forward to seeing you at our next session and at the MFC annual conference in Albania. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. And I would like to add that in the browser you will see the evaluation form. Could you be so kind to complete it? It will be very helpful to prepare the next webinars for you.
Always important to get your feedback. Please remember to fill out the questionnaire. Thank you so much. Goodbye.
Thank you so much.